Okay, so today is Thursday, May 28th, and this is our weekly COVID-19 wayside cleanup office hours where you have the opportunity to ask any questions and we have the ability to avoid or put off answering them until we can confer and make sure that we have the correct answer to that. And just touch base to see how everything is going. From the waste site cleanup perspective, not a lot has changed over the past week. It has been interesting seeing kind of work kind of in some sectors resume. I was in the office yesterday to do mail and actually hit some traffic on the Leverett connector for the first time in a couple months. So somebody is going into the office, somebody is working. DEP staff, both in Boston and the regions, are continuing pretty much as we have been working from home, thinking about and sometimes doing more site visits, going out, doing inspections, kind of easing into that, making sure that, well, if and when we do it, we have PPE, we maintain distance and all of those requirements. But in terms of actually going back into the office, we're pretty much the status quo, and there's no rush to go back in and have that presence. I think from just talking with the senior staff and the regional staff, work is continuing. There are some things that would benefit from being in the office, but for the most part, doing audits, doing reviews, doing kind of the routine work. Once we have access to the appropriate files, it seems to be going fairly smoothly. With that, the one thing we have done publicly in the past week was finalizing another Q&A. So let me bring that up on the screen, share screen. There we go. Oh, another MCP Q&A on limited removal actions and whether we're extending the 120-day to conduct a limited removal action in order to eliminate the need for notification. And one of the things that we've been trying to reinforce is the most important thing for our program, of course, is notification and bringing things into the system and on the record. So this is one thing that we cannot and don't think we should extend, that that 120-day window is great if you can do it, but the intent is if it's still there after 120 days, that notification is required, and we're not extending or eliminating those notification requirements. So that reinforces that. That's now up on the web. And we have a couple more in the works that you can check there periodically or check in again next week, and we'll let you know if anything has changed or been updated. And kind of that's really all I have. It's been kind of a quiet, short week, so full of a lot of other kinds of meetings, but nothing really newsworthy. I'll kind of ask the regional staff if you want to say anything about how work is going kind of in your regions and kind of give a taste of how the regional work is going. I see Elizabeth. So how's the Western region going?
Going along just as you stated. We are continuing doing the audits, and we'll be trying to do some inspections for audits pretty soon. Absolutely continue with the emergency response work. And because in the Western region, we also have the asbestos program, we are also now doing some asbestos inspections and staying on top of that. So we're continuing on and I think being pretty successful with the work at home model.
Mm-hmm. Kind of going outside of our wayside cleanup in general, but since you touched on asbestos, do you have any sense on how the other regions are doing on asbestos inspections as well from BAW?
I don't have any sense in that. I don't sit in on the asbestos meetings because they're not in my bureau. So I don't have an idea if they are out conducting inspections or not.
But I think that is one of the higher priorities for DEP to go out and doing inspections. So
Yeah,
I would guess that the other regions are equally kind of going out and prioritizing those kinds of inspections.
I would presume so because the asbestos work is ongoing.
Yeah.
They're working out there, so it's important for us to monitor that and ensure that they're following all the work practices.
Yeah. And the good thing, of course, about the asbestos inspectors is that they are well trained in PPE.
That's true.
And have the equipment. So, you know, it really is not much of a difference for them in some ways.
Quite true.
Let's see, do we have any of the other? I'm not seeing any of the other regional staff DRDs unless I'm missing them. And if any, you know, Liz, if you have anything you want to pass on or talk about?
No, not really. Paul mentioned that we have some other Q&As in development, and the one that we hope to have next week is related to the discussion we had last week on public involvement, PIP sites, how to hold those meetings and handle repository for the plan. So I think we'll have that available next week.
Yeah, and with that, we'll open it up to everybody. If you have any questions or just want to kind of share experiences from the past week on kind of work that you're doing or not doing, and how you're finding it, and whether you're doing anything differently now that you know, the state is beginning to open up a little bit. And failing any of those, say what you did over Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully you actually recognized it was a long weekend and took some time off.
All the days run together, Paul.
I know that's, end of last week, I had to keep reminding everybody I talked to that Monday is a holiday.
Nice bird pictures from the fells, Paul.
Oh, thank you. They're, you know, the birding apparently, you know, you read in the papers has really jumped. I know nothing about birds except they're pretty. So.
This is Linda with an observation.
Yes.
We took some more bike rides, and I will tell you that wearing a mask is really good this time of year for filtering out the pollen.
Yeah, so I insist I have no allergies, but for those people that are sensitive to pollen, have you also noticed a difference now that everybody's wearing masks, or if you're wearing masks?
I guess we live in a very treed area, so it just rains pollen here. It's just all over everything, and I have to keep the windows closed. But when you ride a bike,
yeah,
it helps.
Yeah. In the few times I've gone out to get in the car, I keep hoping that and wondering if the car washes are essential services, because our cars are just covered in pollen.
Yeah, there's a lot of yellow tinted cars driving around these days.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, I have a question. Since so many of the extensions and due dates are tied to, 45 days or whatever, however many days from when the state of emergency is lifted, is there a place where you can see or where we can get notified when the quote unquote state of emergency is lifted? Because when you go to the COVID-19 page at the state, it doesn't really mention anything about the state of emergency other than a link to when it was originally issued.
First I assume that if and when they lift the state of emergency, that it would be posted on that page, and that it would also be big news, and one would hear about it. But I would also so as we go into this, I mean, my impression, and this is just, in this area, I know no more than you do, but kind of just speculation, observation. As we went into this, the thought was that it was going to be relatively shorter term. And the longer we remain in the state of emergency, and the longer that we see kind of effects on our operations and on your operations, I would not be surprised if there were modifications to the state of emergency, because the state of emergency is partly the health threats that we're facing and the economic impacts that we're facing, and those are emergencies. But there's also kind of a federal funding aspect to the state of emergency. And again, I know very little about this, so I'm treading on dangerous ground speaking. But there's a good chance that the state of emergency for those purposes will continue longer than the imminent emergency type of state that we think of. It's kind of like an imminent hazard, longer than the present immediate threat goes on. So all of which to say, the state of emergency may continue for longer, and I would not be surprised if at some point those executive orders or the guidance is updated to frame it in different timeframes. Otherwise, the state of emergency, if it goes on, I could see it going on for a year. Not that I know anything, because I don't. But for kind of federal fund reimbursement purposes, the actual state of emergency could go on very long, and we may, one not DEP, the state may rethink kind of how to frame those timeframes. So I would keep an eye on that page. If we learn anything, we'll certainly convey that to you guys. But I would go into it thinking that when it started, we thought it was going to be shorter term, and thus a lot of those immediate executive orders and guidances were written that way. As it goes longer, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some modifications to reflect kind of what we can do versus kind of reasons for keeping the state of emergency in place.
That makes sense. I noticed when they do the governor's briefings, it's never mentioned. So, but that would make sense if it goes too long.
Yeah, I would hear we're maturing in the way that we're looking at this, and we're all learning as we go along. So nothing would really surprise me at this point.
Yeah.
But the one thing that they keep underscoring, and certainly we hear it at DEP, is that we're not rushing into anything, and if we're seeing changes coming up, there will be plenty of notice and ability to prepare. And we're taking that approach internally for things like how and when we return to the office. We're not rushing it, and we'll give people plenty of notice before it actually begins to happen. And I assume that kind of approach would also be writ large to how we're doing things like deadlines. And if we're certainly not going to tell you on a Thursday morning call that, okay, deadlines all apply tomorrow, or there will be time to adjust. I just don't know how it's going to happen yet. Any other questions? Thoughts? You can start calling on people.
I did bring a book. We were supposed to have a book theme today, as I recall, Paul.
Oh yes, there was a book theme. Okay, what's your book, Larry?
Well, Paul, I don't know if you can see now. I have to turn off the background. It's called The Body by Bill Bryson. It's basically a very casual, almost superficial, but very entertaining view of all the major systems within our body.
Huh.
One of my one of my main takeaways is that almost every chapter has at least one statement in it where he says, we don't know how this works. Good book.
That's the thing that scared me about biology, is that as the deeper you got into it, the more complicated it seemed, and that at some point you reach the point where, and we're really not sure how it exactly works.
Yeah, well, they're still there. They're still there, Paul. You didn't miss much over the last 5 years since you graduated college.
Whereas chemistry, coming from the other direction, it takes a while before you get to and then it's one big soup and things happen and we're not sure what happens. But I have
I've got one for you car racing fans. This is called Faster by Neil Baskin. Well, you might like this.
Yeah.
And it's a story about Grand Prix racing in the 30s and the French car companies. And there was one called Delahaye that built a car that beat the Nazis' race cars, the Mercedes-driven race cars back in the 38, just before the war broke out. And it's a really good book. They researched a lot of facts about early car racing and Grand Prix racing. And the driver of this car was named Rene Dreyfus, and he was half Jewish. And it goes into what the Nazis were doing and how he got banned. And after the war, he opened a French restaurant in New York City, which became very popular. But it's a great book. I got it on Amazon.
So I've been reading The Girl Who Lived Twice, which is the 6th book in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. And no, Stieg Larsson has not come back from the dead. Another author, David Lagerkrantz, has written 3 more books, and really keeps up the tempo and the thought of the way Stieg Larsson wrote. And so this is so far the last book in the series.
So Joel, when you're reading that, do you have trouble sleeping at night?
How do I answer that? Oh, I sleep better than I ever have when I read it.
When I read the first 3 books, first I couldn't put them down, but I could not sleep I had trouble sleeping at night, partly because I would be reading deep into the night. And then once I finally put it down, my heart would be racing so much.
You know, there are parts to these books that are like that for sure. There isn't as much of the violence against women that there were in the first 3 books. So maybe that makes that does make it much easier to read. But the thing I don't like about this last one is the English translation is really clunky. It's really hard to get through certain parts of it.
Well, I'll put up mine. Unfortunately, I've been reading it on Kindle, The Wild Urban Plants of the Northeast, a field guide. So it's less of a
Little thin on the plot, is it?
Sounds gripping.
Well, it's written with the thought that a lot of the species that we tend to think of, or that are in fact invasive, are both interesting as you walk through the urban environment, and very kind of accessible. It's something that on dog walks or the like, which is pretty much how I'm getting out these days, you're going to see. And then that with climate change, we might have to rethink what we view as invasives and bad, and be a little bit more accepting of the types of plants that will in fact continue to thrive in these new environments.
So we should start reading the Guide to the Plants in the Southeast to see what it's going to be like up here in the next.
That's probably what this is. He just copied your plants of the Mid-Atlantic and just moving it up.
Well, I have a book to share. I don't know, am I like one of 2 or 3 lawyers on this call? So lawyers read too, and they read things other than about the law. And so one of the things that I feel very lucky about is that my clients are engineers and scientists as opposed to business people. A lot of lawyers have to work for business people for a living, and I didn't feel myself to be very suited to that. But in my attempt to keep up with my client, I found this basic geology textbook in a local bookstore here in Vermont, and I never knew really anything about geology from college. So that's a lot of fun. I get to learn about all of the various bedrock formations that I see in my walks around here in Vermont, which is where I'm hiding out for this particular COVID event.
Who's the author of that, Luke?
It's Grotzinger Jordan Press Seaver, and this is used, so it's 15 years old, though hopefully, I don't know how quickly geology is developing as a science, but they've got plate tectonics in it, so.
Yeah, Frank Press and Roy Seaver have been around for a while, though I don't recognize the other names. Ray Seaver.
Okay.
Ray Seaver, yeah.
Okay, I do have a work-related text that came in on the chat asking, please send a link to the new IRA Q&A. Can't find it on the website. Thanks. So I will show you, let's see, share the screen. If you're looking for it, the easiest way to find it would be to just search for MassDEP Waysite Q&A COVID. And among the top answers will be MCP Q&A COVID-19 edition. And that would be the easiest, simplest way to get it. Other than that, going to any MassDEP page, I think, and clicking on the See MassDEP COVID information, and then follow the links to the Wayside Cleanup side. Okay, any books or any other work-related things? We can end at 9:30. So, and lastly, we'll turn to Larry again to find out what the theme for next week would be.
Well, I don't know. Given Luke's enthusiasm, I'm tempted to say something about nearby geological features that you like, but that may be too esoteric.
It's fine by me.
Okay, geological features.
Does pavement count?
Yes.
There's rocks in it?
Oh, yeah, it does, yes.
Okay.
So long as there's some invasive plants growing in it.
Right.
If we broaden it to just rocks, then maybe we could tie some music into it too.
Says the woman with two guitars hanging.
Yeah, which I do not play. I have no musical talent, just an appreciation for it.
Okay, rocks. Next week will be rocks.
Everybody can bring in your favorite rock.
Okay. I have a link to a collection of photographs of somebody's rock collection that I took once. So all sorts of interesting rocks there, of which, of course, not being a geologist, I know very little about, but that doesn't stop me from appreciating a good rock, just like I appreciate a good bird, even though I don't know their names. So with that, and seeing no other hands raised or questions are related
if anybody can bring in a hackmanite to make Matthew happy, that'd be great.
A what?
Hackmanite. Apparently Matt has a mineral, or knows a mineral named hackmanite.
Okay, we'll search for it.
Or rockite. Yeah.
Okay, see you next week. And you can always send emails to us with any questions that you think about coming up. And have a good week.
You too. Thanks, Paul.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye.